Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie Lezak, CMO at BDEX, along with David Finkelstein, BDEX's founder and CEO. What's new with you this week, David?
Hey, Jesse. All good here. Looks like you're at a nice new venue outside this time.
Yes.
So
yes.
Enjoy that.
I've got the outside view this time. The Great Lake.
Yep. All right. Yeah. I don't know. Been busy, but looking forward to another great podcast guest this week.
Yes, same here. This podcast has been planned months in advance, just like many of them. But today we get to welcome Michael Kaminsky. He is the founder at Recast. Let me bring him on the screen. Thanks for joining us, Michael. Oh, no, we can't hear you.
You're on mute.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you join us on the show this week, Michael. And would love to give you a chance to kick it off for us. So why don't you give our viewers and listeners an opportunity to get to know you a little bit of background about you, and what led you to found Recast and what you guys are doing today.
Yeah, for sure. So Recast is a platform for doing what we call marketing analysis and planning. That includes things like marketing mix modeling, but a lot of work around, designing marketing budgets, thinking about how to optimize those budgets to get the most return, and really think about understanding, the return profile of different assumptions and different beliefs about how your marketing is actually working. My background is in causal inference and econometrics. So I started my career in academia doing like policy analysis studies. I did a lot of work in healthcare, clinical trials, that sort of work. But then have spent, the bulk of the rest of my career really focusing on marketing science, thinking about how do we take these tools from academia that like academic economists use to understand how the world works, and then apply that to business and help businesses actually be able to grow better, faster, stronger using those tools.
Very
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate that. And marketing and measurement are things that we like to talk about a lot here on Deconstructing Data, because obviously data ties in a lot with these things. So let's let you jump in and kick us off on this first topic: why measurement models fail without real data validation.
Yeah, for sure. So this idea of real data validation, I think, is sometimes a little confusing to people, because they're like, well, I log into the Google ad platform and I see real data there, right? So what do we mean when we say real data validation? The sort of philosophical concept that I think is really important to understand when it comes to marketing measurement is that the true incremental performance, like the true return on investment of investment in some marketing channel, is unknown and unknowable, right? So like if I invest $1 million in Facebook, that will generate some amount of revenue for me, ranging from $0 to $100 million. There is some true amount of additional revenue that's driving for us, but we don't know what it is, and we can't know what it is. And so when we think about the right way to do marketing measurement, there's sort of 2 points that I think are important to keep in mind. One is that you need to be thinking about this idea of incrementality, right? If not for this additional marketing investment, what would have happened otherwise? Right. So you don't just want to say, oh, a bunch of people clicked on our ads and then purchased, and that means those ads caused the purchase. That's not necessarily true. A lot of people could click on an ad who were going to purchase anyway. So we care about this idea of incrementality. And then the second piece is that we need to recognize that no measure of marketing is going to be perfect. They're all going to fall short in lots of different ways because we don't have access to the truth. And so different measurement methods are, all going to be limited in important ways. And it's really important for us to think about exactly in what way is this measurement wrong, and how can we sort of test the assumptions of these different measurement methods against reality, against the things that actually matter to the business, like the amount of profit that we're generating, in order to make sure that we're not fooling ourselves.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point when it comes to incrementality, because a lot of times people overlook that, that thought process. There's a certain amount of business that's going to come in. So what is the actual incremental lift that this campaign is actually generating, right? It's something that we have some experience with, and some of the clients that we have in the TV and CTV space, where we've talked about, like, they know that they're going to reach so many households already. So when we run a campaign and we apply the data that we have to that campaign, what is the incremental lift and how do they measure that? So they can see that they actually reached X number of new households that they hadn't reached before, with that same program. And so I think that's like one example. And it's sometimes something that's very easily overlooked. People look at, they run a campaign and look at what was the total revenue generated from that campaign. But, you have to break that down and take a look at what would you have generated already. And that's a great.
Yeah. I mean, and this shows up in like one really common way. If you go to all of your different ad platforms and you look at like the amount of revenue generated from each of those different ad platforms and you sum it up, you put it in a spreadsheet and you sum it up, you'll often get a number that's like much higher than your actual revenue. So like there's double counting happening here in like very meaningful ways that can really lead you astray if you aren't really just like constantly thinking about it. What would have happened otherwise, I think, is like the question that we always need to be asking ourselves as we're thinking about trying to do marketing measurement well.
Yeah. So talk to us about that sort of validation layer. Yeah, that's really important. It's something that we talk about a lot is the importance of validating data. It's not just believing in looking at the data and saying, okay, that's the data. You have to have some level of validation, some way to clarify and know what you're looking at, right? So what does that validation layer look like?
Yeah. So one of the things that I like to point people towards is sort of looking at like at the end of the day, you should be able to see the results of your marketing in the bottom line, right? You should be able to see that, hey, if we're spending a lot more marketing, our sales are going up and we're getting more profit. Or, you might have different growth goals that maybe don't necessarily result in more EBITDA, but you should be able to see that. And so one of the problems that I often see is that people have these sort of crazy beliefs about their marketing performance, again, often driven by looking at some ad platform reporting number. And it says, oh, this marketing channel is amazing. It's delivering a 10x ROI for us. And they scale up the marketing channel, but their total revenue, right? The total business revenue at the end of the day doesn't move. And that sort of indicates to me that marketing channel cannot be delivering a 10x ROI. Mm-hmm. And so what I push people to do is I say, like, look, what you need to be doing is you need to be making sure that like the numbers add up at the end of the day. The total ROI of your marketing channels needs to add up to your total revenue, or the total ROI of your marketing channels plus the amount of organic business that you have, that should add up. If you change your marketing budget, if you reduce it or you increase it, and you have some belief about how much additional revenue marketing is driving, you should be able to see that in your revenue at the end of the day. And so a lot of people that I talk to, they work at these brands and the finance team is like constantly in a panic because they have this forecasting model in Excel that is based on these assumptions about how marketing is performing, but they never see those results at the end of the day, either in top line or bottom line. And that means that those assumptions must be wrong. And so the first place that I point people to look is that your marketing beliefs about the return on investment, about how performant every channel is, should show up in your financial statements at the end of the day. And if it's not, then probably something is wrong. And so that's like a really good, easy place to start, or relatively easy place to start, is to say, hey, we're making changes to marketing. Are we actually seeing those results in revenue? And if not, which of our beliefs about marketing performance is wrong?
I like that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a great way to think about it. And we've got DW in the comments. Our CTO measurement needs to include outcomes. Yes, absolutely. So let's transition now into AI and bringing that into the mix, using AI and experimentation to improve marketing performance. Can you kick us off on that, Michael?
Sure. So AI, huge topic. I'm a huge AI user, right? I've got a bunch of Claude code sessions running in the background here behind my screen. And so huge fan of AI, but also very cautious about using it for what I call causal inference, right? Where causal inference is this idea of we aren't really sure how the world works and we have to make inferences about it, generally using statistics. And this is sort of the problem of marketing measurement, right? Because the true return on investment of marketing is unknown and unknowable. We have to do causal inference to try to learn about it. What it turns out is that a lot of the LLM tools are not particularly good at causal inference, right? They make lots of assumptions very quickly, not necessarily transparently, and often those assumptions don't map onto the way the world really works. And so what I've found is that, and I've even I'm experimenting this myself, is you can try to have these tools like design and run, an experiment for you, or interpret the results of an experiment, or build a media mix model. And they produce something that looks plausible, but actually is deeply flawed and wrong. And at least today, and again, this could change in the future, but at least today, you really need someone who knows what they're doing, looking very closely at the output of what these models are generating in order to avoid getting numbers that are totally wrong. And again, the problem in the context of marketing measurement is that it's very easy to produce numbers and say okay, Facebook is giving you an ROI of 5x and linear TV is giving you an ROI of 7x and radio 2x, but we don't have anything to compare that to know whether or not it's right. And that's a core problem because, AI or any type of machine learning model can generate results very easily. And you'll get a bunch of results saying this channel's good and that channel's bad. But since we don't have any ground truth to compare it to, we don't know. The model could have made a bunch of mistakes along the way. And it's very difficult for us to interpret and figure out is this actually right or not? So that's sort of a big problem, I think, in AI today when it comes to doing marketing measurement, is a lot of people unleash these models to try to do tasks that they aren't really that good at today. And again, the problem of LLMs making a bunch of assumptions and hiding those is, I think, bad. Anybody who uses LLMs a lot has this experience. It causes a lot of problems. But the problems are even worse in the context of marketing measurement because, again, there's no easy way to check the work or to check the work just based on the output. Checking the work involves looking at all of the code that was written, understanding all of those assumptions, not just looking at the output and say hey, yeah, this looks right or not.
Yeah, and I think DW just made a comment also on about the fact that LLMs are eager to please the user. And I think that's where those assumptions come in. One of the things I've kind of realized in all the work that I've been doing in LLMs is that you need to prevent it from making assumptions because it will make assumptions. And the only way to do that is to invest a lot of time in how you prompt it. And give it your own assumptions. You can make the assumptions. You have the experience to make the assumptions that you need to make. So give it as much guidance as possible. So that's the one recommendation I always make to people when people are oh, well, I used AI to do this and it made all kinds of assumptions and it says this, but it doesn't look right. Well, it doesn't look right because of all of those assumptions. And so I find myself sometimes literally writing a 1 to 3 page document, which is just outlining exactly what I want and then giving that to the AI. And then a lot of times I'll give that document to the AI and then I'll tell it, based on this document, help me write a prompt to prompt you to get these results. Because when it analyzes your outline and what you want to do, it'll come up with other questions and it'll be I see you wanted to do this and you wanted me to assume that, but do you want me to do this? And then it'll ask you. And then next thing you know, after all that process, it writes the prompt for you. And then I'll literally then go and say, okay, now do this and give it to the prompt. Yeah. David W says it needs context. It needs a lot of context. That's the biggest thing that I found is the more context. So you really have to invest the time in writing a long, I often think about it, think of it as your worst employee that you have to explain everything to. You know what I mean? This is the new guy that doesn't know anything. You have to explain everything to him, write it all down. But then once you do that, I think the LLMs perform really well.
Yeah. So, I love that strategy, but I think one of the problems that I see is that LLMs can be Dunning-Kruger effect amplifiers. right? Where if you're not familiar, like the idea behind the Dunning-Kruger effect is like the less you know about some topic, the more confident you feel about it, right? So it's one of these issues of like, someone off the street comes in and tries to tell you about your industry. You're like, that's all wrong. You clearly know nothing. But like they have this surface level understanding that makes them feel very confident. Right. LLMs often push people towards that, where it's like in the process of going back and forth with an LLM, when I'm in my like zone of expertise, I'm like, no, that's wrong. This is what you need to do. You need to do this differently. That's wrong. Like, here's all the context you need. But when I'm outside of my zone of expertise, I'm more willing to let the LLM just make decisions. And I'm like, yeah, no, I know what I'm doing. Like, but this all looks good. It all looks good. And the problem comes, right? I talk to like CMOs and they're like, yeah, like, we don't need a vendor to do measurement. Like I've got Claude building my marketing mix model, or I've got Claude running, our GeoLift software. And I'm like, I don't know if this is a good idea. Like there's a lot of assumptions happening in here and it feels like you're being very productive when you're having Claude run this for you. But especially when you're out of your zone of expertise, it can be very, very dangerous. And that's the thing that I worry about sometimes. I mean, I think some people have a lot of success with it, but like that can be the problem of it's like, oh, I'm a CMO. I want to do marketing measurement. There's all these open source tools. I'm going to have Claude do this for me. But like that CMO doesn't necessarily have all of the context required to be able to like really use those tools well. And if it was for like making a marketing plan, something they know really well, they would follow your process and it would be really good. But once you step outside of your own zone of expertise, you can get yourself into trouble really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. 100% for sure.
Yes. We're getting a lot of comments, questions, ideas. Says, I asked the AI to create the context for me, and then I adjust it across channels. And I was just mentioning that I tell it to not make assumptions and to ask me instead, because sometimes I forget what it might assume. I don't have that software engineer mind. And so sometimes I forget that like, oh yeah, how would it know to go grab this? So I don't want it to assume that I want it to go grab it from somewhere else. But yeah, so great episode, great topic. Any more on AI that either of you would add in terms of using AI and experimentation to improve marketing performance?
So we talked a bunch about AI, but maybe not that much about experimentation. So maybe I'll just quickly touch on that. Incrementality testing, sort of GeoLift experimentation is a very hot new thing in marketing these days, which I think is great. Experiments are wonderful, and they're a really good way to help you sort of get closer to some idea of ground truth. A well-run, controlled experiment gives you a lot of causal signal without needing to make a ton of assumptions, and so it's really valuable, right? If you run your connected TV ads in some regions but not others, and you see a big lift in sales in the regions where you ran the connected TV ads, that like gives you a really strong case to say like, hey, these ads really are driving additional revenue, driving additional conversions. And that's really important to give you some layer of ground truth when you're going through the rest of these exercises, trying to figure out how the puzzle pieces of marketing measurement fit together. So I think experimentation should be a part of everybody's marketing measurement plan, how they think about pulling all of these pieces together, because they're one of the very few ways to get good causal estimates, good incremental estimates of what marketing is doing without having to make a ton of assumptions. So there are lots of limitations that come with them, but I think that's been, a really important and really valuable trend over the last couple of years is people driving towards doing a lot more experimentation.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I'd add to that is that it's important that the experimentation ties back to the first topic, the measurement and data validation, because experimentation isn't quite as simple as it sounds. Experimentation, I'm just going to run this ad and see how it performs. Like you need to be doing everything, all the measurement and the validation as well, in order to make sure that you have a truly robust experimentation process.
100%.
Yeah, definitely. So what's the best way for a CMO to maximize context? What would either of you say to that?
David, I'll let you take that one first.
Well, I think that it depends on the context. Let's put it that way. What is I think I need to know more about the question. As far as the CMOs maximizing the context, I mean, you need to follow this process that we're talking about, right? I mean, I think it goes back to not just the measurement and the validation. It's the experimentation has to, be in the same context as the original sort of measurement and validation process. These are not separate, processes. It's the same process. The experimentation process is just trying something new. We're trying a new, we're trying a new medium. We're trying a new creative, whatever it is. But you still have to run the same process. So the context is the same.
Yeah, nice. And what will be the hottest marketing trends that will still be around in 5 to 10 years from now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I always think to like sales and marketing, it's interesting to even think back to history with those and like what is still the same even today throughout the telephone and TV and, the invention of the internet. Like word of mouth is never going to go anywhere. Like getting people to talk about you and to say good things about you, like your 3 Ps, the marketing basics. That's the stuff I always go back to on this. But what about you two?
I don't know about trend, but one of the things that I feel passionately about and that I've talked a lot about is sort of rebuilding the relationship between marketing and finance. And again, this connects back to what I was talking about at the top of like being able to connect marketing inputs to finance outputs. How is marketing driving revenue? How is it at the top line? And how is it driving profit at the bottom line? I think is really important, but has honestly gotten lost in the last couple of years, where people have focused on impressions and awareness and haven't really focused on tying how marketing is actually driving the business forward. So I think that that relationship between marketing and finance, of thinking about marketing as an investment in the business and sort of expecting returns on that investment with risk, with uncertainty over long periods of time, getting more explicit about that is, I think, the thing that we're starting to see now and that is going to continue over the next 5 to 10 years. And I think marketers, the marketers who will be successful in the next decade are the ones who are ready to sit down with the finance team, sit down with the FP&A analyst, and really think about, okay, what are the risk trade-offs of these different marketing budgets, and how is this investment like really helping us increase the enterprise value of the business overall?
I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go to the complete other way. So the question was, what are the, what's not going to change in the next 5 to 10 years? What marketing trends that'll still be around, right? I think that we should look the marketing trends that's always been around is when you're marketing, you're communicating with people and you're engaging with people, and so you have to. It's a conversation that a brand is having with a person. I think that's going to change. And so I think that that's one thing worth talking about, is that in the future, marketing campaigns are going to be communicating with agents, and we're going to have agents that are going to buy things for us. And we need to think about how that changes the landscape. It won't be in every medium, right? There's obviously going to still be medium, TV or whatever, where you're communicating with people and you're engaging with people and you're trying to move people. But I think that there's going to be an element of marketing that is going to switch from, agents communicating with each other, marketing agents selling to buying agents. And I think that's going to change, the way that we need to look at some of our marketing processes as well, and how we market.
Great point. Absolutely. Yeah, because who wants to be scrolling anymore? We're going to have our bots shopping for us. So we've got a lot more comments and questions. Looks like David was talking to Kyle Hammer. We know, so you'll have to go back and check that out, David. I know you and Kyle need to connect. And then one more question: what data should a CMO give LLM access to or not? I would love to know that. And I don't want to cover anyone's face here, so I'll just go full screen here. Again, the question in geo-limited experience is the same. You must assume that short period after which the result is visible. This may be easy for direct response over performance ad, but it is impossible for any out-of-market audience, as those are your future clients you will not contribute your revenue now. Thank you, Igor. We've got a comment from Igor there. But I'll just leave there. Any thoughts or questions or comments on any of that from David or Michael before we move on?
I'll say
All
Igor's
right.
comment on experimentation is spot on. Again, this is why every marketing method is limited. The true long-term full effective marketing is unknown and unknowable. Geo experiments are limited in the time window that they can observe any effect, and they also come with a lot of uncertainty. So, again, I think it's a really important tool to have, but absolutely not a panacea. You can, geo test as much as you possibly can, and it is not going to solve your problems because it can't measure everything, especially over longer time periods, and it's going to come with a lot of uncertainty.
Yep.
100%.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's jump into the next topic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, selfishly, I did kind of want to know what CMOs shouldn't add to the LLM. I mean, obviously, not the API keys, right? You got to keep it privacy compliant, but is there any other secret there? Like, what do I not know that the marketer is not supposed to add to the LLM? Don't give up the keys to the castle.
Yeah,
don't give up all the data.
Yeah. No, I think that, it's measurement data. That's the keys that you want to give. You want the LLMs to be able to help you with your measurement data. But yeah, I mean, as far as things that you don't give it, it's, just keep it privacy compliant. That's it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, moving into our third topic, building first-party data strategies in a privacy-first world. That leads nicely into this privacy focus. Michael, could you kick us off?
Yeah, so maybe first-party data strategies in a privacy-first world. I mean, I think that this is important. There's a lot of basic blocking and tackling around data that I think some marketing teams, and especially the ones that I work with, tend to do very well, but I think a lot of marketing teams don't necessarily put the investment in. Basic things like a basic marketing data warehouse, right? Like having an always-on data warehouse updating of how much are you spending on all of your marketing channels, how many clicks, impressions are you getting for that. Just having that collected somewhere so that you can query it, so that your LLMs can query it, is incredibly valuable. But there are so many companies that I talk to, and they're like, yeah, we have no idea how much money we spent on, whatever, sub-channel radio last year. Our agency handles that, and we just don't know. And I'm like, how do you not know? That seems crazy to me. Because you can't, if you don't know what you're even doing, you're never going to be able to analyze it. You're never going to be able to have your own perspective on what's working and what's not. And so I think this is changing. I think people's perspective on data has really started to shift. But there are lots of big companies out there that have no access even to their own internal data. They couldn't even get started on any of these analyses because the data simply isn't there. And so stuff isn't super complicated. This isn't things that we need to go invent some new technology to have this amazing first party data. It's we just need a summary of what we've even done ever. And that's a good place to start. You can get a lot of really rich insights from that information, but you have to sit down and say yeah, look, we're going to have a data warehouse. We're going to keep it clean and up to date because that's going to empower all of this other stuff that we want to be able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only thing I'd add to that is the power of enriching your first party data, because first party data is limited to what you're collecting. But if you have ways using third party data to enrich that first party data and or modeling that first party data, you can extend the value of it immensely.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the data warehouse should be the first step. There's so much stuff you can do after. But again, it's always crazy to me that I talk to these, again, very large brands. Everybody listening to this has probably shopped at their stores and they just don't have anything at all.
Yeah.
So I think get the basics in place first. That's my first recommendation. And then from there, there's a bunch of interesting stuff you can do, but you should own your own data. You should have that easily accessible to you internally. You should not be dependent on some third party, your agency keeps the data for you. I don't think that that's a good practice at all and ends up causing a lot of pain for a lot of these organizations.
Absolutely.
I hear that myself. Just a lot of the time, we start working with a client and they've had a bad experience with marketing, and a lot of the time comes back to that, and then they have a hard time trusting marketing going forward, just because they uploaded all their data into that CRM that marketer has, and then that marketer disappeared, or they had a falling out. So that's really good advice, because yeah, when I see people who've been scarred by marketing, it's usually in regard to their data. You want to own your data. Your first party data is your gold. That's what you want to build. That's your audience. When we're on these platforms like LinkedIn, those are rented audiences. We don't own that data, but the audience that you keep and you own. So in terms of just getting into that more, I guess, David, could you tell us more, like, what could we be thinking about with building our first party data strategies, especially now with AI?
Well, yeah, like I said, supporting what Michael said, you have to have that data strategy so that you're owning it, managing it, and centralizing it, your first party data. But once you're doing that, you're the next big thing you can be doing is enriching it. And the great example I'll give to plug our own product is 2Segment, one of our newest products, which basically just enables Shopify or any e-commerce company to take the first party data that they have, which is all, their customers, their orders, their lifetime value, all that stuff that you're getting out of Shopify, and enrich that with some third party data so you can understand who those customers are, demographics, psychographics, all this other stuff that will help you understand that you have different types of customers for different types of products. That's the reality. So are you going to market to them all the same way? Not necessarily. And so, tools like that will enable you to then segment those customers. You may have customers that buy the same product, but they have different personality traits. So communicating to them differently is important, right? And you don't know any of that without enriching them. And that's where enriching the data using AI, all of these things can help you further understand your customers and market to them better. And so to me, that's a really important piece of your first party data, is what you do with that first party data.
Yeah, what do you do with that? I thought this was a good question from David Goki. Who owns the data strategy in a mid-market company?
Yeah, that depends on your team and the size of your team, right? I mean, you should have data owners, but again, it all depends on the size of the company. The bigger the company, you have data teams that own the data and run the data and manage the data, and that's their job. But as the company gets smaller, that becomes little, a gray area, and that becomes a shared responsibility between marketing teams and technical teams and data teams, and it depends on who you have, on what you have at your disposal.
I think that's right. I mean, mid-market is like such a wide range of companies that there's no real answer. I'd say I would default to the technical team. So if you don't have anybody else, like CTO, office of whatever software type people you have, assuming you have that. And then if not, falling under the CEO, and either building a dedicated data practice, which can start with one data person, a data scientist maybe type title that does everything. But otherwise, if you have any software engineers, those would be the right people. The organization of companies has changed so much in the last 8 years. 8 years ago, there were very few, tech forward companies that didn't have data people and software people, but now there's a lot. So if you don't have that, you either need to work with an outside consultancy that can set up your data warehouse and manage that for you. There's a lot of them are very good. Or you need to sort of focus on developing that in-house. And it sort of depends a little bit on what your strategy around data is, how much you want to invest in owning that capacity internally. As you get bigger, you will eventually want to fully own it, at least have the ability to own a lot of it internally. So I would say plan for that as you are growing.
Yep.
Good stuff. Okay, well, we have to make sure we get to our final topic. This is something we've asked all the guests on Deconstructing Data, which is, what are some of your favorite tools in your tech stack that empower you and your team?
Tech stack that empower me and my team. I mean, I would say Claude. I do a lot of Claude. My co-founder and I are both very, very deep into that. I mean, outside of that, I think like my recommendation to almost everyone is to like keep it as simple as you possibly can. We are like a decent sized company. We do a decent amount of marketing. We like are in Google Sheets a lot. We look at like very basic metrics, very basic time series. We don't do any crazy like digital tracking attribution stuff just because I don't think that it's very valuable. I think the stuff that is really valuable is, looking at the how did you hear about us on our demo form and then like thinking about it and thinking about how that fits into our marketing strategy. And so my advice to everyone is always like don't overthink it, especially when it comes to marketing data, marketing analytics. Try to keep it as simple as possible for as long as possible, and then only add on more complicated tools as you actually need them.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Yep, all-in-one solutions are always great. So good. Yeah, well, I have to bring up this question since it was asked, David, before we go. How do you enrich data at BDEX?
How do we enrich data? Well, that's a difficult question to answer when you're talking about the billions of records that we enrich. It's a process. It's a very complicated process for sure. But more importantly, what we do is help other companies enrich their data, and our goal there is to make that process as simple as possible. So.
Yeah, I think that was more of the question is how do we help businesses enrich data at BDEX? So if someone wanted to do that, then yeah, like what would be that process for them?
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of different ways to do it. You can do it through our user interface. You can do it through our API. If you're in the e-commerce space, we have our new product, TwoSegment, where you can do it, twosegment.com. And soon to come, we will have an MCP server, so you'll be able to just tell Claude to enrich your data for you.
Absolutely. And I mean, I got to give a little shameless plug. I've started using the Pixel. So I've been getting some BDEX data through OmniRocket just for a client.
Nice.
I said OmniRocket. That's Kyle's company. OmniIQ. We have too many Omnis. Yep. OmniIQ. So yeah, that's been an experience. I'm hoping on Deconstructing Data, maybe we can break that down a little bit and get into it. Oh, we've got DW here saying it's a secret in terms of like how we enrich the BDEX data. Yeah, I'm sure that's a big proprietary secret. But yeah, such a good episode. Thank you so much, Michael, for coming on. Before we leave, would you like to let listeners know how they can find you after the show if they want to reach out?
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm Michael Kaminsky. We also have our Recast YouTube channel where we're publishing a lot of like really amazing, super informational videos on marketing measurement and also like philosophy of measurement, stuff that I'm really passionate about. So Michael Kaminsky on LinkedIn and then the Recast channel on YouTube are the best places.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. We really appreciate you joining us on the show today. This was a great show. I think our listeners got a wealth of information today. So thanks again.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Michael. We'll see you backstage. Everyone else, we'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Have a great week.
So audience members, we want to invite you to get powered by BDEX. Build authentic connections with your audience and drive unprecedented engagement. So just imagine harnessing the power of AI to craft your audiences that truly resonate with your brand, ensuring that your marketing is hitting the mark every time. We want to bring you closer to those marketing goals and we're eager to guide you. So just visit bdex.com. You can click on the Talk to an Expert button and get powered by BDEX.
Deconstructing Data is the show that makes data make sense. Every Thursday, David Finkelstein and myself, Jesse Lezak, sit down with industry experts to unpack how data really drives marketing. We do this in plain language anyone can understand. If you want real insights, real conversations, and zero jargon, tune into Deconstructing Data live on LinkedIn every Thursday at 4:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Yo.